Once again, Genshin Impact delivered a great update. They really cooked this time. I recently finished Lune IV, Archon Quest Act 7 and 8, and honestly, it was phenomenal. We got major lore reveal, an incredible new boss fight, and some pure cinema level cutscene. So in today's video, I'm Pentagon Vanewar, and I'll be giving my honest thought on the main story of this update, and also a little analysis. Quick note, since I played as Lune, I'd be referring to the Traveler as she, and Aether as the sibling. As always, spoiler warning, if you haven't played the quest yet, and want to experience it yourself, now your chance to click away. Alright, let's get started. Before we jump into Lune IV, I want to briefly talk about Lune III. I'll be honest, at first I wasn't completely blown away. Don't get me wrong, it was good, fun and interesting, but for me, it didn't reach the same emotional height as Lune 1 and 2. Aside from Nefer's storyline, which was actually one of the weaker parts for me. Yes, we learned important lore about Nibelung and the Moon Sister, and finally meeting Alice and Nicole was huge, but emotionally something felt missing. Compared to the tragedy of Rerir's story, there just wasn't enough impact or tension. That said, the ending completely changed my opinion. I expected Dottore to show up at some point, but not like that. His sudden appearance, capturing Columbina, stealing the moon marrow, snapping his finger like Thanos to stop time, it was incredible. And Columbina's apparent sacrifice to stop him, absolutely tragic. I was furious at Dottore, even more so when we later learned that he didn't even need her because he had already created an artificial moon marrow. So yeah, Lune III won me over at the very end. I couldn't wait to see what come next. And then Lune IV happened. Since the release of Nod-krai, the main story has been absolutely insane. And Lune IV continued that trend. Then I want to start with Dottore, who is easily one of the best villains Hoyoverse has ever written. Honestly, I think this is the first time Genshin has given us a 3 villain. There was Rosaline, but once you learn her backstory and understand why she became who she was, can you really call her a villain? Same with Rerir, yes. He caused a wild aunt and was a sinner, but he was evilly manipulated by both the Abyss and Dottore. He was a killer before becoming a sinner. That's true, but he didn't seem to take pleasure in it. He was simply too loyal to his king, and his descent into madness came from his love for Tholindis. There's a lot more to say about them, but I'll save that for another time. Dottore, on the other hand, is a villain by choice. Even if he believes his actions serve a greater good, he'll do anything to reach his goal, even if it's mean killing thousands of people, including children. He's a master manipulator who loves only himself and his research. He has no remorse and sees everyone else as nothing more than test subject. That's why I love exploring his lab, seeing the twisted experiment he conducted behind closed doors was genuinely horrifying. Monster with undead in a dark oppressive atmosphere. We even learn he can turn people into monsters and transfer human consciousness into animal. That's not just evil, it's deeply disturbing. The entire lab honestly felt like Resident Evil. Hearing factory soldiers scream as they were killed by the Dottore experiment really showed how far gone he is. Another reason Dottore works so well as a villain is his intelligence. He was behind everything from the very beginning. This wasn't a last-minute scheme. He had been setting this up for a long time. Possibly even before Sumeru. He stayed close to Columbina purely to use her, to obtain the moon marrow and exploit her for his experiment. Once Columbina realized this, she began distancing herself, eventually leaving the factory. Even then, Dottore still found a way to manipulate her, resurrecting Rerir and forcing her into a situation where she had no choice but to pursue the moon marrow. All he had to do was wait in the shadow for the perfect moment. This man calculated everything. I'm convinced he even had backup plan in case we fail against Rerir. And honestly, I love villains like this. Villains who actually use their brain. I also really love villains who talk, who manipulate through words. And Dottore does it perfectly. The conversation he has with the Traveler was one of my favorite moments. Even though he talks a lot, every word feels intentional. He's constantly trying to influence and manipulate Lumine. The fact that he could unlock or descend the power so easily genuinely surprises me. I didn't expect the Traveler to be that powerful. But it also explains why everyone is so interested in her, and why the rule of the world seems to suppress her power. And to be honest, a lot of what Dottore says is true. The Traveler will always be considered an outsider in this world. Why should she accept the authority of the gods? Especially when this world doesn't even belong to them in the first place. And let's not forget, it's largely their fault that the siblings were separated at all. Dottore may be a psychopath, but there is truth in his word. So even though this section with him is mostly dialogue, it never felt boring. Every moment spent with him is tense and fascinating. Now there is one last thing involving Dottore that I want to talk about. The boss fight. And how his story seemingly ends. The boss fight against Dottore, now known as the Heretic of the False Moon, was phenomenal. And honestly even better when replayed outside the main story. First of all, the soundtrack was incredible, especially with those strong Sumeru vibes. His ability was also really creative. The red circle mechanic was especially interesting because it teleports us into another space, one that looked like the inside of a game engine with missing assets. It genuinely felt like we were inside a computer. During the main story, Dottore also teleported our group away, almost as if he's selling us. It's really made me wonder, is this similar to the plane where the Traveler was sealed by Asmodee at the start of the game? Overall, this fight really felt like a real final boss. Something Genshin has often lacked compared to other games. We also got some incredible scenes during and after the battle. First, Androne deaths. Something I absolutely did not expect. Especially since she died protecting the Traveler. That said, I wasn't completely devastated, because I genuinely believe she'll be rebuilt, alongside Polonia. Like in Fontaine. She's a robot, rebuilding her feels inevitable. Still, her final words were really strong.
Go to hell, Dottore.
Then come one of my favorite moments in the entire game. Columbina returned. She break part of the false sky with the combined power of Varka, Lekino, and Nicole, triggering phase 2 of the fight. Columbina powered the group, allowing us to overwhelm Dottore. They managed to steal a moon marrow, beat him down even further, and then Columbina completely annihilate him with her power. That scene is easily one of the best Genshin has ever done. That said, I don't believe Dottore is really dead. We don't see a body, not even dust. And for me, if there is no body, the character isn't dead. There's no way someone as brilliant as Dottore didn't plan for failure. Who to say he doesn't still have a clone somewhere, even after supposedly destroying them all in Smurf. Now let's talk about Columbina's fate, because this part of the story was packed with massive reveal. That protective shield over the Scion, the book in the lighthouse, the broken vase. Most of us assumed Nicole was responsible, but nope. It was Columbina from the future. I did not see that coming, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one. I'm not a big fan of time travel stories, but this one was handled surprisingly well. What I did expect, however, was the reveal that Lune IV was a part of Columbina that she created. From the beginning of Nod-krai, she felt suspicious. The similarity, the way she followed us everywhere, it's all made sense in hindsight. And that was just the beginning. Unsurprisingly, we encounter Rerir again. And unfortunately, my biggest fear came true. The redemption arc. Rerir was a great villain. So I won't lie, I was disappointed at first. That said, the explanation worked. Because the Abyss can reach this place, Rerir no longer hears its whisper, allowing him to regain his sanity. Even so, I still feel they could have done more with him. I do hope he finds a way out someday, especially now that he's finally said goodbye to Tholindis. But if he ever returned, would the Abyss corrupt him again? Could he even become playable one day? Who knows? In the end, it was a solid and emotional conclusion for both of them. And realistically, I don't think it could have been handled much better. The absolute highlight of Columbina arc was finally meeting the three Moon Sisters in person. I honestly didn't expect them to have full character model. I thought they appeared in a more abstract form, maybe something Kuvaki related. So this genuinely surprised me. Their designs were stunning and completely worthy of moon goddesses. I loved the moon of their back and the tattoo. Canon was my favorite, mostly because blue is my favorite color. As was Sonnet, I found her voice a bit childish and wasn't fully sold on it. But overall, seeing the Moon Sister at last was incredible. Then came the lore bomb. As I suspected, the moon reflection is the prison Nibelung created for them. I'm still a bit confused about the timeline though. I thought celestial nails were used after the war to cleanse abyssal corruption. So was this retconned? What fascinated me the most was how the heavenly principles were described, referred to as them, and the firmament. Does that mean the heavenly principles are multiple beings? The first and second descender? We know that the second descender helped building make the Genesis, but before that, was there only one or they were together since the beginning? And or does this include the Shade? When they first arrived in Tevat, they came in peace, but later became obsessed with power, imposing their authority through celestial nail. The first thing that came to my mind was Skirt World. Stranger arrived peacefully, and let's later destroy everything. The parallels are striking. I felt genuinely sad knowing there was no way to save the Moon Sister, but I love that they entrusted all their power to Columbina. This entire section was one of my favorite moments in the story. Second only to Columbina returning with full Moon Goddess power and new King Dottore. Outside of Columbina and Dottore's storyline, the rest of the update was less engaging for me. At least until the Traveler returned. When you compare moments like Duran, Albedo, or Nefer to the Traveler Dottore scene, the latter were far more compelling. The scene where Albedo and Wanderer discovered Dottore transferring human consciousness into animals were disturbing, but not especially memorable. I did enjoy seeing Child again, and how much he clearly cared about the Traveler. Same with the group discussion in the Curatorium. That said, just because those moments weren't exciting, doesn't mean they weren't important. They exist to show how dangerous Dottore truly is, and how much of a threat he posed to the entire world. Still, personally, the parts without the Traveler weren't my favorite. There are two big exceptions. Sandrone and Paimon being separated from the Traveler. I'm not usually a big Paimon fan, but seeing her separated from the Traveler was genuinely interesting. It's the first time they're truly being split like this. Yes, something similar happened in Natlan, but the Traveler wasn't alone. Mavuka was there. This time, Lumine was alone and trapped with the Dottore. That scene hit hard. Seeing Paimon break down almost made me cry. It really showed how much she cared for the Traveler. It's also allowed the Traveler to speak more, without Paimon constantly talking over her. I genuinely hope they separate them more in the future. Not permanently, but enough to maybe explore Paimon as her own character. How did she survive before meeting the Traveler? One thing is certain. After that scene, I no longer believe Paimon is Asmodee. I actually have a new theory about her, but that's a topic for another video. Now Sandrone. I love it almost every scene involving her, especially the section where we play Polonia. Even though all we do is walk, it was still incredibly cool. It made me wonder, is this a hint that Polonia could be playable someday? Maybe as part of Sandrone's Elemental Burst? It wouldn't surprise me at all. Sandrone without Polonia just won't feel right. As I said earlier, I don't believe Sandrone is gone for good. Her story is far from over. She's a fascinating character, and I can't wait to see more of her. Let's start with the spaceship. We finally found it, and it was on the moon, apparently moved there by the Heavenly Principle. What makes this even cooler is that Columbina herself bring us there. I absolutely love the entire sequence, following her as she talked about the people past she saw. Then boarding the boat, that scene was stunning. Honestly, it could have been a perfect wallpaper. Then we arrive on the moon, and seeing Tevat from space was incredible. What really caught my attention is that we only see half of the planet, specifically the continent we explored so far. That strongly suggests that beyond the Seven Nations, there may be much more to Tevat than we realize. But there was even more, like what we learned inside the spaceship and in the new Traveler outfit description. First of all, I love the new outfit. They look far better than the old one. And honestly, they made me want to play the Traveler again. Not only that, but we also get a bit more power, which make them feel relevant again. Now back to the spaceship. We learned that it flew over Teyvat years before the crash, which already raised questions. But then the outfit description take it even further. A supernova that destroyed a twin world. The ship being a pioneer vessel, equipped with an AI and genetic vault, capable of reshaping an entire civilization. All of that in an outfit description. This is a massive lore drop, and if you think about it, it raises an insane possibility. What if the Heavenly Principle themselves are that AI? The idea alone completely changed our review Teyvat. This is a massive lore drop, and if you think about it, it raises an insane possibility. What if the Heavenly Principle themselves are that AI? That idea alone completely changed our review Teyvat. Finally, there's a glitch at the very end of the quest, which I really want to talk about. Three possibilities immediately came to my mind. First, it could be a hint that Dottore is still alive. Second, it might mean that what we did awakened the Heavenly Principle. Third, and this is the wildest one, maybe we're no longer the same version of the world. Unless it means nothing, but let's be honest, I highly doubt that. There's a lot more I want to say about this, but I saved this for another video. That's everything I wanted to cover about Genshin Impact, Lune IV Act 7 and 8. This video ended up being longer than I expected, but honestly so much happened, and we got an incredible amount of lore revealed. Since the start of Nod-krai, Audioverse has made massive progress with the main story, and I really hope this level of quality continue. Now that Nod-krai's story is mostly complete, and with only a few patches left before Shesnaya, probably 3 or 4, I'll admit I'm a little worried about what kind of content we'd get next. That said, Varka is coming in the next patch, which likely mean his return to Mondstadt, and I'm really hoping we got major lore about the city past. We got some in about a certain Roland during our adventure in Nod-krai. Even we found a mural with reveal about where Boreas came from. Who named it Boreas? Just near the camp in our resort near the camp where the Knight of Favonius are. So there is a lot hint about Mondstadt lore for the next patch. I also have a strong feeling that Dormant Port is finally on the horizon, probably in 2-3 patch. Lantern Rite is live too. I haven't played it yet, but I'm hoping it gives me an interesting story as well. But what about you? What do you think of this Archon quest, how it's end? What are your thoughts on everything we learned? Let me know in the comments. I really love to hear your opinion. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for some more short livestream, let's play, and discussion video. And if you are a fan of the Trail series, The Legend of Zelda or Genshin Impact, I also make lore video, trivia short, and theory content on Panagon Lore Archive. Link are in the description. I'm working right now in a video lore about the world story of Dottore, so it will be out soon. Thank you all for watching, and may the Archon be with you. Panagon Vanimar offline.